Hello and welcome back to Concept First to Mastery. So in this particular beginner CSS series that we've been having, we'll be having, for this section, we'll be having responsive design approach. So responsive design is not actually an option, right? It's a necessity. And it's something that you need to learn early on so that you can have mastery of it by the time you are done with all these tutorials that we've been having. So we'll be like, just like the practices, right? We'll take some few concepts and then we'll build something to drive on the point. So what do you expect, or what should you expect, right? Here we'll be building a responsive AI news dashboard, right? The focus is not the feature in itself, but the design, because this is CSS, right? So we should expect a modern UI, right? And you have with opportunity to use CSS grid and Flexbox again, right? Then light and dark mode also will be implemented. Then since we are talking about responsive design, so we'll talk about things that you need to actually work on to make your application responsive across different screens. So I'll still talk about what responsive design is. Then responsive images and responsive typographies, right? Very important. Then other things, media query, other things that has to do with responsive design, we'll talk about that. Then also in order to be able to populate some data, right, that I'll be using, I'm also going to be making live API call, right, to get AI news, and I'll be presenting that using JavaScript. Then, of course, we also talk about mobile first approach, because that is the modern approach to application development, right? On the front end side of things, right? You want to handle mobile applications first, then extend features into larger screens. So these are the things that I'll be looking at. And without wasting time, let's continue from there. Yeah, so this is what we're actually going to be building to kind of drive home the point and master whatever we'll be talking about, right? So there is nothing, this is just something basic, but then that will allow you practice the concept. You don't need something complex, right, to practice and understand the concept. Usually what you need is something very basic. So here, let me just open the responsive design panel. So usually what you do is that you right click right on your mouse and you click on inspect. So that would open up the development browser environment, right? So usually this is where you inspect HTML element stores. So as you can see, I'm moving. I can inspect this. I can inspect whatever is going on here. But that's not our focus. Our focus is on this, right? Which is what allows us to toggle on responsive mode, right? So once you click on that, you see that I have this now. So this is iPad Pro. So you can switch here and let's just type from mobile just to show you that this is responsive. If I click here, so you can see that this is width of 375 devices. So this is mobile, right? And you can see that this is responsive on mobile device. So this is now in columns as against what we have on the larger screen, which is in row, right? Then if you check, let's check another one. Let's check iPad mini. So you can see that this is now 2 column, right? Instead of 1 column that we have on mobile. So things are responsive, right, across board, not just the layout, the fonts also are responsive, because what you have is not as big as what you have on the desktop version, right? So the images too are responsive, because you can see that these images are actually bigger than this, but they are forced to stay within the container width, and that's why they are looking like that, right? So those are the things we want to quickly look at without wasting time. So just like the normal approach, we'll first of all build the HTML, right? Then we'll talk about some concepts, then we'll work on the on the CSS. I believe by the time you are done building this, you should understand what responsive design is all about, and you should be able to take that knowledge to other applications that you'll be working on. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you love what you have been seeing from this channel. It does help the channel grow. And don't also forget to toggle on your notifications so that when I have new content, you can be among the first to be notified. And also, please try to like and share the content so that more persons can actually benefit from this. Thank you. All right, so let's just go back to the last screen and let's start working on this, right? So I have this already created as the practices. These are the projects that we worked on thus far that has to do with CSS, right? So I have this CSS responsive design folder that I've created, and I will just be, okay, let me just do this first. So I will just ensure that I'm opening that. So you can open it, you can just drag this to your VS Code, but I want to use the command prompt to do it, right? So I'm in that project folder now, and I can just do code dot shortcut to open that project in VS Code, right? So now I have that. You can see that there is nothing here, right? So as the practice is, we need to have that we need to have that index dot what's it called now? HTML. Okay, sorry about that. So we need to have that index.html entry file, index.html entry file, right? So currently there is nothing there. We can just generate that boilerplate, shift exclamation mark. That allows you to generate this boilerplate that you can start working with, right? Then of course we also have another file for styles. There's a styles.css, right? That's where our CSS files will live. Then we can also have, I told you that there are some JavaScript implementations, right? So scripts .js. So JS is the extension for JavaScript. You are not doing JavaScript and you are not expected to know JavaScript to implement this, right? I'll give you the JavaScript code and I'll try to kind of explain what is going on there. But our focus is on responsive design. But at the same time, we still want to build something that looks cool. So okay, so let's just look at the design. So we have this, let's change this to AI news dashboard. So it's best practice that if you are learning like this, you just try to code along, right? Then link. So let's say link, that's the relationship between this current file, which is an HTML, and where we are going to CSS. So we want to link to a CSS file, which will represent our external style sheet. The folder is the current folder, right? The current folder, which is this, then styles.css. So usually I've said that you should test that this is working, right, before you go too far. So you can just say background color of red. So you can see the background color change to red. It means that this is properly connected, right? So there is nothing else to see, but then we should still be able to see that body. So let me just run this open with live server. I've already explained how we can have that function, right? The live server. All you just need to do is go to the extension, right? And where is it? Come here and search for live server here. So you will see it. I've already installed mine. You can see live server here. You will see it and you'll be able to install it. Let me just all right, just search for, okay, yeah, this is it, right? You can see that, no, not this. I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to, yeah, this is it, right? So just make sure that you look for the right one and you install it. So you'll be able to just right click on any file and try to launch that file, the HTML file directly. All right. So then let's also connect our script. Since I already said we'll be using script, so we have the script tag here, right? Usually you place it in the head section. That's how you connect external scripts. Just like we connecting CSS files, right? You can also as external file. You can also connect your JavaScript file as an external file. This, of course, we've talked about the importance of using external file in this scenario, right? It just ensures that you can use that same file across multiple screens, right? So here, what you are expecting here is the source. So why this one is why this one expected the relationship attribute, right? This one expected the source attribute, saying what's the source of where is the source of the script, right? It's in the current directory, and this is it. So we don't have any script there, but there's also a way you can test that this is properly connected. So I will put the default flag here. So, and what this actually means is that we are not doing JavaScript again, but these basic explanations, I just believe should be clear. So I'm putting the file here, right? So that this script will not run until the until the content of the page has been inserted into the DOM, right? So document object model for the browser to use and for the user to see. The importance of that is that usually when you write scripts, your scripts will be interacting with the DOM elements, right? Document object model elements. If these things are too high for you, don't worry, you will catch it later, right? So every element, right, is represented as an object, right? You might not know what even an object is. So, but at the same time, just understand that what this is saying is that don't run the script until the contents, right, whatever is the elements here are already rendered in the browser, because this guy, right, this script is going to be interacting with them. So at times too, when you have script here and what is in the script is heavy, JavaScript can be heavy. And if JavaScript is heavy and you are doing heavy work in the JavaScript, right, it can cause a delay in the load time of your page. So you don't want JavaScript to interfere with the load time of the content of your page. So that's why you put the file here that, okay, wait until the content of the page is made available for the browser, right? Before this is implemented. Don't forget this file. It's very, very important. So if you don't want to do this, another alternative is to just not put it in the head section, and you just make sure that you put it here, right? Then every other thing on the element on the page will be here. So this will ensure that actually, of course, JavaScript reads from top to bottom. So before it gets here, it means that the elements on the page would have been treated, right? So, but let's just put in the end section and put the default flag there. So then we can start dealing with other things, right? Just basic stuff. So let's have the header section, and we're just going to say header. Then here we are going to have let's have class of header. Then here we are going to have a div, right? And it's also going to have a class of logo, right? And we'll just say AI news, right? And then just beside it, we have a button, and it's just going to say class class of, just say, okay, let's use ID here, because ID of sim toggle. So this is actually going to be used for here. This is going to be used for, what's it called now? Here, right? It's going to be used to toggle between light mode and dark mode, right? I forgot to actually demo that. So, And that's that for the S section HTML element. Then outside the S section, we also have the main news section, right? The main news section. So there we are going to have the class of main, right? And here we can just have class. You should be getting used to this, the use of appropriate classes now, right? Container. I don't like seeing people using div main. No, the class name should actually reflect the section you are dealing with, or it should reflect the feature you are dealing with. It just makes your code readable and understandable. Then inside that particular news section, right, we have another section there. So we're going to have different sections. So for this section, it's going to be with a class of featured. So this is going to be featured section, featured, right? Class of featured. You know, usually when you are dealing with news, right, there will be a featured section. Then let me just draft the sections. Then we also have another one, latest news section. So this is also going to be a section, and it's also going to just say class of latest news, right? So if you are just joining us, we are coming from somewhere, so that's why I might not be overly explaining some things again, because there are things I've explained over and over again during the course of this series. So it will be good that if you are finding it difficult to catch up, just try to check the previous series, right? And of course, I'll be dropping that in the description section. Just try to check the description section of this section of this tutorial, right? And you will see the links down. You'll be able to follow. Then let's also have AI articles section. So this is also going to be a section. So we are going to have just that three section. Going to be a section, and we are going to have article, let's just say article grid, class of article grid. Yeah, so then we will still populate that. Then outside the main, I think we can also have the footer section, right? And the footer section is just going to use the footer element, right? You should know that we should use, there's a reason why I'm using footer here. If you are not clear about that, check my previous videos. We are not just gambling here, right? We've had some concepts discussed, and every decision we are making here is based off those things that we have actually treated in the past. But if you understand this, then we can just continue. So, but don't just assume. If you don't understand it, it's better to just get the concepts right. Check on the previous tutorials that we've had on this. So we have a paragraph here, and just going to say ampersand copy. Then this. So that's the shortcut to saying copyright, right? I'll just say 2025. Can just say concept first to mastery, right? So that's what we have here. So what is left for us is just to start putting in the work in each of the featured section. So before I do that, I just want to do something. So here, I want to bring in this moon icon, right? I want to bring in this moon emoji. So, you know, I'm switching between this and this, right? I want to bring in this. Then we are using JavaScript to actually bring in this one. So I will explain all that. Then this one too, I want to bring this in. You can copy any emoji that you want, right? But for me, I'm just using that, and this is it here, right? So you can just go on the internet and copy any emoji that you desire. So I'll just put that there. Then for this one too, I'll just copy this also and put that here. AI news. Just put something that looks like that here. Yeah. So you also notice that I brought in my images, right? Here, image one. Feel free to download any image. This will also be on my GitHub repo. So if you so want to use this particular images, you can find them there and use, right? So these are the images that I prepared to use. And you can see that it's packaged inside at the assets folder. All right. So for this section, the featured section, what do we want there? Because majority of these things, I'm going to populate the data with JavaScript, right? Um, for the featured news, let's have heading 2. Don't forget I've said the choice of heading is very important. So heading 2 here, because that is not the most important thing on the page. So the most important thing on the page, you have heading 1, right? If we really want to implement that. So AI news. Then underneath that, we just want to have a div, right? That is going to hold that featured item, right? Here we can have an ID, because I'll be using JavaScript to interact with this, right? So I'll just have an ID. I'll call it featured news. So, and that will represent this div. So inside this div is where I'm going to put the featured news. Just like we have here, you can see that this is a div, right? And inside this div, we have the featured news information. So just that I'm going to populate it with JavaScript. So that's just it with the featured section, right? Then the other one is the latest news section. So we can also still do H2 here, right? Just to ensure that things are consistent. Just the latest updates, right? So here we are going to have consider that the updates here are they are in form of list, right? You can say fearing AI will take their job. Workers strategize for a long battle against tech. Is China AI to DeepSeek as good as it seems, right? So these are just list of items coming from the from the library that I'm actually consuming. So this library actually gives you the latest AI related updates, and that's what we are getting here, right? So since it's a list, it's normal to use li or ul. So for that, we just say ul, then we'll give it an ID. So ID because I'm going to be making API call to another application. And when it says its response, I'm going to use JavaScript, right, to populate that here. So, and that is just how this works. So just say news list, right? News list. That's all. That's all. Then the other one is this section, right? So for this section, this one I will just populate things myself, more like accordingly, right? But let's see what we have done so far before I do that. Here, so let me just remove that background. We don't need it anymore. All right. Yeah, so you can see that this does not look like what we have on the page. Just look at it. It doesn't. That's why CSS mastery is very important, because you can see this is just a simple info. But by the time you look at what we have here, it's more in terms of design. You can see this box right, is having curved edges, is having shadow, is having color, is clean. The background is different from here. Everything looks cool and elegant and modern, right? So that's why CSS mastery is not something you can joke with. Let's just quickly finish up with what we are doing so that we can go to the CSS, right? So here let's have let's have H2. I will just say AI insights and analysis, right? And in there we are going to have a div. So that div we are just going to call it, let's just say grid container, because that's what it's going to be, right? Grid container, and in there we are just going to have um don't forget how grid work, because they say as you lay your bed so you rely on it, right? I'm taking this approach because I'm going to use grid here, and for you to use grid there must be a container. The parent container must be prepared to be the grid. Then inside the parent container you now start having the grid item, right? So here the article, I'm going to have article, so each item there is going to be an article. Here each item is an article, right? So there is a box holding all these. So all these, each of these are grid items, right? But there is a container holding them that represents the grid container. And that's what I'm just trying to model here. So here we are going to have class of article, right? And inside that article, we are going to have, I will just do one and then I'll copy the rest. We are going to have img to represent the image, right? Then I'm going to do the slash assets, then slash this, just to point to the first image, right? So alternate text, always good to do that so that screen readers know what is going on, right? And also so that if this is not going to load for any reason, the text will still be displayed. So we have that image path set up. Then we have the H3, right? And let's just say this is the title of the each article now. How AI, right, is revolutionizing healthcare. All right. And then we have you also have a paragraph text, right, that says class of writer. Then inside there, we're just going to have by Jane, just a Jane Doe. So this is just a dummy name. Then we can have this and say, let's have span. You know what span element is, right? Already. So then let's say we just want to say tech crunch. So and this has to do with the source, actually, class of source. So what this span allows us to do is target this, right? You know, it's still within the paragraph by John Doe tech crunch. So what we want to do is we want to be able to target this specifically and give it some styling. That's why we are placing it in a span, right? Span is still an inline element. Then we also have another paragraph, right? And we can just say class of description. So each article should have description. Description. Then take note of your class names so that by the time you are styling, right, there won't be bugs. So and here we can just say, let me just copy this from here, right? This is the text. So you can see that because of that span target, right, with the class of source, I'm able to target this and give it a special design. So here we just put this here. So I think that's what I need about each article, right? You can see this is an article, right? And this article is actually a grid item within the grid container. So we can have multiple of it. This is one, right? So we can have another one to make it two, right? We just need to customize it. So I won't, since you already know how to do one, I will just bring in the rest so that this will not be too long and boring. So you can see here that just like I was saying, this image is too big. But look at what we have here. The image is responsive because we did some things that enforced it to stay within its container. And that's why it's not that big. But in the actual sense, this is the size of the image, right? Then you can see other things here. So let me just bring that in and we'll continue from there. Yeah, so I brought in 3 more articles, right? So this was the first one that we did together, right? So you can see that I have 3 more. Just the information is what is changing. You see the same class of article, image, heading 3, paragraph, description. The only thing that is changing is the text. So this one is future of AI, right? Then this one is ChatGPT and evolution of conversational AI. And this one is AI ethics, balance innovation and responsibility, right? So yeah, that's just what I have there. And by the time you come back here, this is what you have, right? But it's not looking like what we need. That's where we now start applying our CSS. So let's start applying our CSS and we'll start with the header section. So the first thing I want to do here is actually to bring in the fonts that we would like to use, right? Just as the practices, the choice of fonts can actually influence your design look and feel. So I want to use a special font different from the regular fonts that we have available. All right, so for you, if you don't have anything selected, right, all you just need to do is come here and select, right, or search for fonts here. So you might search for something like Poppins. I'll be using Poppins, right? So you search for Poppins and you select whatever you need from there. So, but if you look at my cards here, I already have some selected family, right? All I just need to do is click on Get Embed, right? I want the art import. So if you are using this, you are placing it in the S section. If you are using this, you are placing it in the style section, right? So this is what I'm copying. Poppins, you can see the family name here is Poppins. It's not just Poppins only. Then at another point, I use Roboto Mono, right? So I just copy this and bring this in. All right, just put it there. So then we can start talking about the other general styles, right? So I just put something here and say general styles. So we use the universal selector for that. I want to reset the margin to 0, right? If you have been watching my series, I talk about this all the time. It's just so that there are some default settings that the browser agent will apply, right? And if you don't want confusion when you are working, you can just do a reset on some of them. And that's what I'm doing with padding and margin. Then border box, we are setting to box sizing. We've discussed this also in one of the series that we've had, right? Why you should always use border box. You should always set the box sizing to border box. Then font family. So here I want to use the name here, right? I want to use this Poppins as the default font family. So if there is no Poppins, then I want a fallback to sans serif. The sans serif is native and it's available, right? You don't have to connect to any library to use it. So that's it with that. Then for the body section, I just want to set the background color to ash F5, F5, F5. Again, don't forget, okay, maybe I should also do that, but okay, let's just do that. Let's just say at roots. No, I think it's this roots. Yeah. So I can just have dash dash BG. So, and I'll just set it to hash F5, 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 right? I can just say, yeah, I might say primary BG, so primary backend, right? So, and I will just come here and say var. We've talked about this before, that you should always prefer to use var, because it just makes your life easy. When you need to change this color for whatever reason, you won't need to start going through all the entire thing to change, right? You can just change the variable here and it will apply everywhere. So then we have the color, the normal default text color, right? And that is hash 333. So I will just do the same thing and say dash dash primary text, primary text color. I'll just say hash 333. So that's not too dark, but dark color. Var, then we can just say primary text, right? Then we can also have transition, just to make sure that things are responsive, and necessary animation. So transition all 0.3 seconds. All right. Then the next thing we want to talk about, we've not started thinking. I've not started taking responsive design decisions. Once I start taking that, I will point that out. Yeah, there's no responsive style decisions here yet. So then let's talk about the dark mode, right? You notice that here, so you can see that the background has changed now, right? Here we have these two stuffs, AI news. This guy is supposed to be somewhere here, so we are still going to style that too. But it's going to be, I'm going to be toggling it. So you see that when I toggle in, the entire application, the background turns to black, right? Then when I toggle it again, it changes back. So we are changing from, we want to be able to change the background from this primary BG to the other one, right? So let me just create another variable here and call it, let's call it dark mode, BG, right? And I will just use hash 222 here, right? And the color will still be that. So what we can now do is we can just come and say, whenever JavaScript is what we do that dot dark, whenever we have a class of dark attached to the body element, right? Don't take note of this time. There is no space. This is different from this, right? This one means that we have the body element. Then inside the body element, we have another div with a class of dot dark. Is different from this. This one means that the dot dark class is exactly on the body element. This is what I mean. Very, very important, because if not, it will not work, right? Here, it means that dot means that on here we have another class called dot dark. So JavaScript is what is going to help us apply that. So JavaScript is going to dynamically, once that button is clicked, is going to dynamically add dot dark class to this body, right? So if you don't use this, right? If you are doing this, this is what it means. It means that this is not on body, right? It means somewhere else, maybe on the main class here, right? You have dot dark. That's what it means, because this one is descendant selector, right? This one is descendant selector. Why this one is not descendant selector? This one is just pointing to a class on the same element, the body element. And that is what I mean here, right? Because I want to be able to change the color of, I want to be able to change the background color of this body, the entire body, the moment the dark class is added to it, right? So I want to believe that that makes sense. And we are not adding it manually with our hands, right? So while we can test it with a manual addition, for instance, I can just come here and do that class of dot dark. Then by the time I come here and apply this style, let's say I'm setting background color to background color to var dark mode text, right? Then the actual color, I'm setting it to var then primary text color. So by the time I do this, right, you see that where is it? This will turn dark. Okay. Dot dark audio element. Okay, yeah, this is not dot dark. This is supposed to be just dark. So that's a typo. So you can see now that the background changed. So what is happening here, right? So what is happening here is that you notice that this particular CSS style description, right, comes before this, right? So CSS reads from top to bottom. It's read from top to bottom. So when the browser is interpreting this, it's going to read this from top to bottom. So it's going to meet this first. And at this point, background color is this, right? So if I comment out this, right, background color will be white again, right? Because that is what it's meeting first. That's what it's reading first, this color. So, but by the time it moves down to this line, it's going to see again that on the same body element, right, there is now another style, which is dot dark. Whenever dot dark class is on the body element, we are setting this to this color. So at that point, it's not going to use this dark mode color. So, but we are not going to manually set that, like I've said. You see now it's dark. It's going to be set by JavaScript. So right now, it's just to test that that is working, and I'm now going to remove this from here. That class will be added by JavaScript. When we click on the moon button, right, it's just going to toggle. That's how the dark and the light mode works. So of course, usually too, you will also change the text, right, so that everything aligns, right? But for now, it's just something simple that we want to implement there. All right. So I think that's just that. That has nothing to do with responsive design also. So I'm saying that because I still want to give you the basics, right, of some concepts that you need to work with when it comes to responsive design. So don't forget that part of your responsive design work is also the choice of layout. And I've talked about this, right? Even though we are just talking about responsive design now, we've learned some things that paves ways for responsive design that allows us to build responsive application. When I say responsive design, I'm just talking about the fact that your application looks good on mobile, on tablet, on desktop, right? Small screen, medium screen, and large screen. So, for instance, when you are building your layout, when you decide to go for Flexbox, right? When you decide to go for grid, so those are already in them. They're already built to be responsive, right? And you won't need to do much work in order to make them responsive. You won't need to necessarily start writing media query, right? To change a 2-column system to a 3-column system, right? A 3-column system to a 2-column system. Usually you can use something like flex wrap, and automatically it will just know when to actually collapse the layout when the device width can no longer hold them together and make them still look good, right? So whenever you are using Flexbox, that's a responsive design decision. Whenever you are using grid, that's a responsive design decision. I'm just saying this so that you know that responsive design is not just about one thing, setting media query, because that's what most beginners think. No. So there are other decisions. The choice, your font size, you want to be responsive across board, right? Your layout, you want to be responsive across board, and there are decisions that you can make to make your life easy. Using Flexbox, using grid is one of them. So for the Edge section now, right, I'm going to be using Flexbox. For the Edge section, you see that here I have AI news and I have this. So I'm going to be using Flexbox just to make sure that we have that things align in the horizontal as against the vertical that we currently have. So we can just say display flex, right? You already know what that will do, but let's just come here and see. So you can see that this is already staying together on a straight line. So we are yet to apply background and all that. Display flex, then justify content. I just want to say between. Justify content is used along the main axis, and our main axis currently, right, is the road. Again, if you don't understand this, check my Flexbox series, my Flexbox section, and you understand this. So justify between, we just want to move the items there. We have two children item, right, that are flex item. We want to use move them, and you can see that this is now here. This is now here because uh, justify content or space between will just ensure that the items are actually spaced apart, and whatever is left is used to separate them, and that's what we have here. Right, so let's just add other stuffs. If you have been practicing, you should be good by now with all these things. Align items here is going to work along the vertical. We just want to make sure that things are perfectly centered along the vertical axis. Then we have padding, right? So for padding, we are going to have let's say 15 pixel, top and bottom, 30 pixel, left and right, right? Just so that there's breathing space for what we have. You can see that we have padding here now. We have the same thing here, right? So maybe we should apply a background color so that we'll be able to see things clearly. So background color, let's see, background color of this one, I'll just use it here. I won't use variable because I don't think I'm using it more than, okay, let's just stick to that principle, right? So yeah, let's just say dash dash, let's just say blue, let me just say blue 80 for now, right? Then just say ash 007 BFF. All right. So we can just come down here and just say var blue 80. So that's going to be the background for that. Then the color is going to be white. So that's going to be, let's just use this white, right? And then the position. Okay, let me put it here because it does seem that I will need to use that white over and over again. So I can just use dash dash white, right? And that will be ash FFF. You can just come back here and say var this, right? White. Then position. So I want it to be sticky. We've talked about position too. If you don't understand this, also check my series on CSS section on position, right? So you see that here, this is, by the time I scroll down, it stays there, right? So it's sticky. You can just set, you need to set the top value for it to work, right? Just set top value, I'll set to 0 so that it just stays there. By the time you come back to what we have currently, you can see that, yeah, that looks like it, right? Okay, so the logo itself and this guy, we'll still need to style them, but I think we are getting there already. So then the logo, these are not responsive design yet, right? The logo, let's just have font size. Okay, yeah. So the moment you start using font size, responsive design decision is being made. I'm using Remunit here, and we've talked about, again, we've treated this in sections, right? This is where we are now putting everything together in section. There was a section where we talked about font sizes, right? Fonts and other stuff. So here, all those sections, I'll leave them in the description for you. Here we are using 1.5 rem units. So this is 1.5 root element. And the interpretation of this is very important. So this is responsive now because as I change device width, as device width changes, right, this is going to peak. This is going to be changing based on the root element. So if the root element, for instance, now, if our font size here, if we specifically set our font size, the root element is always set in the body. So if we say font size, you say font size here is, let's say 14 pixel. Let's say we are setting to 14 pixel. So by the time we are saying 1.5, this is going to be 1.5 times 14, right? That's what we are going to get in terms of the pixel interpretation of this, right? So whatever you set here will be based off the roots element font size, which is the root element here is the body, right? So those are places where you can start making your responsive design choices. Again, you can see that the moment I change that, my font size changed, right? I think it went smaller, right? So, but let's just go on with that. I will want to stick with the default browser font size, right? As against what I just said there. But I just needed to do that so that you understand what is going on. So you can see that it's bigger. The default browser font size is bigger. So then this is what we are setting for the logo, the font size. Then the font weight. You already know what font weight is. These are things we have discussed also. Bold, right? We want to use that bold. This keyword, you have different options here. You can also use value like 700, like 500, whatever is convenient for you. So you can see that that's what we have here. Okay, so this is what I'm dealing with, right? The logo and all that. Now let's deal with this one, which is the theme. And if you check what I have here, right? I actually gave it an ID here. I have an ID of theme, right? So I can just copy that so that we can quickly apply necessary styles there. Just say dot, it's a class. Okay, it's an ID. So it's going to be hash, right? When it comes to an ID, you use hash. We just say display. We just say let's remove the border first, right? So we just say border of none, border of none. Then let's say background of transparent, so that we just inherit whatever the parent background is. It will be more like a see-through into what the parent background is, right? The font size, we want to still use 1.5 rem units, which is responsive, right? And then we want to set the cursor to pointer so that when you hover on it, right, you see that hand icon. Then the color, we want to set it to white. So this is where that setting variable becomes important, because now I would have been thinking of writing that color code again. But because I've set it somewhere, I can just use it straight. So you can see that by the time I come here, I have this, right? Which is close to what we have here exactly. So that's it. Of course, when you click on it, it won't work now because we need to bring in the JavaScript to make that work, right? Then I will do that as a final step to what we are doing. So that's it with that section. So before I move to the next section, let's just quickly take some of the things that I want to talk about, right? When it comes to responsive design, right? So responsive design is actually a web development approach that ensures web pages adapt to different screen sizes and devices. I've already shown you this. The application I built, right? I showed you on mobile device, on tablet, and on desktop devices, how that the layout switches, the font size changes, the image conforms, and all that, right? So that is very, very important. The goal is to provide an optimal viewing experience, easy reading and navigation with minimal resize, right? Pinning and scrolling. So why responsive design is important? Because usually when you don't know the importance of something, you might not feel it's compulsory to use it, right? So it increases accessibility across various devices. So it just means that what is visible on desktop, you can still view very well on mobile. What is visible on tablet, you can still view very well on mobile. If you don't do that, you can be sure that what you have on desktop is too big to fit into what you have on mobile, right? If you don't have those responsive design in place. Enhances user experience by adjusting layouts dynamically. Just like I showed you, I had an example there, 3-column system, switching to a 1-column system on mobile, right? So that's what I mean by layout, because this is a layout here, right? We have a 3-column system layout here. By the time you get on mobile, right, it's just 1 column. Then helps with search engine optimization, right? So search engine optimization actually prioritizes mobile-friendly sites. So if your site is not mobile-friendly, you might have issue with SEO, right? Reduces the need for separate mobile and desktop versions of a website. So if there is no responsive design, right, in place, what it means is that whenever you want to make your application okay on mobile devices, you will need to create another version of your desktop site. Usually that was what was in place before responsive design came into existence, right? So that is taken away. So when it comes to responsive design, one of the things you must understand is media queries and breakpoints. Media queries and breakpoints. So what are media queries? What are breakpoints? So media queries actually allow you to apply different styles based on screen size, resolution, and other properties. So what it means is that with media query, right, you can target different screen sizes. So for instance, look at here now, the body here, right, is not, the body here is just the actual, okay, let's say the approach I'm taking here is the mobile approach first. So whatever is not in the art media is actually, whatever is directly in the CSS file, right, it's actually for the mobile design, right? So as I'm going up, you can see here, I'm saying at media. This is the media query flag, at media. So you can now set the minimum size. Say at media, min width of 768. So this is saying that when the device width is at the minimum of 768 or upward, right? So let's change the background color to light gray. That's what we mean by responsive design using media query, right? You just use the at, you target the device width, right? Whether mobile, whether tablet, whether desktop, right? So this device width here is what we mean by breakpoint. This is a breakpoint now. Minimum of 768 is a breakpoint. At another point, you might have 1024 pixel, right? That's another breakpoint. So those breakpoints will actually represent different device widths and all that. So this example applies a gray background only if the screen width is 768 pixel or more, because we are saying minimum, right? But when it is not up to this, what we have is here. So media query allow you to apply different styles based on screen size, resolution, and other properties. So these are common breakpoints that you will see for mobile phones, right? The width range is between 320 pixel to 480 pixel, right? For medium devices like your normal tablets, you have 768 to 1024 pixel, right? So that this breakpoint is range is referred to as the tablet range, right? Then we also have the laptop and desktop range, 1025 pixel to 140 pixel, right? So that is also what you have for larger screens. For extra large screens, you just have 1441 pixel and above. So if you work with this breakpoint, you would have captured different devices, and the moment you're able to adapt your application to work with those devices, you are okay, right? So don't forget that I mentioned also that mobile responsive design is not just about breakpoints. Why this is good, right? There are other decisions you can take that will also allow you not to do too many things in the media queries, right? So I will still show you some examples because I'm going to implement an example. So it's also possible to have multiple breakpoints. Just like I've said, you can see here at max width of 480. So this is max width here is talking about 480 and below, talking about small devices, right? Any device whose width is 480 and below, this whatever style is applied here will apply. Any device, right, whose width is 481, between 481 and 764, whatever style is there will apply. So anyone with a minimum of 769, whatever style is there. So you can have these multiple breakpoints in your application just to ensure that things are properly displayed, right? It's just as simple as that. So apart from the use of media query, another responsive decision that you must pay attention to is the choice of units, right? Because this will influence your font size, right? Your fonts. So the EM, the rem unit, the view height, the view width, the percentage, and the pixel. So not all these are responsive. Pixel is not responsive, but the other ones are responsive, right? So you should know when to use them. I told you what root element means already. I already explained these things, right? You can check one of the series that I had, right, that actually dealt with all these things in detail. So using the right CSS unit ensures flexibility in layout. And the moment you do this, you might not necessarily need to make too much adjustment in your media queries, right? But if you don't do that correctly, it just means that in your media query, you will be changing font size almost in all screens, right? So you want to take decisions that will prevent you from doing that if you can. So absolute unit, pixel is an absolute unit. Because of that, absolute means fixed size. It's not responsive, right? Percentage is relative to the parent element. When you say percentage, so you are saying the size is relative to the parent element. If you say width of 50%, so that will be 50% of the actual parent element, depending on what, depending on the relationship. You might have a div, and the div will have an immediate parent, right? I might have grandparents. So it's relative to whatever state you are, right, with that element. Relative to the font size of the parent, this one is relative to the font size of the parent. That is the EM, right? So if the parent here might not necessarily be the body element. So that the body element is the root element. So that is the difference between EM and REM. The REM always refers to the root element, which is the HTML or the body, right? But the EM actually refers to the parent, which is relative. The parent can be I can have a paragraph and I have a div. The paragraph inside a div. The div becomes the parent of that paragraph, right? So that's just what you need to understand about the use of EM and REM. Then view port height. So one VH is equal to 1% of the screen. So when you say 50 VH, you are still more like saying 50%, because one VH is equal to 1%. The same thing with viewport, one view width is equal to 1% of the screen width, right? So the screen width will always be changing. And if you can set this will also be changing based on the screen width. So it's responsive. The only one that's not responsive here is the pixel, right? So you know when to use, when you know that your text is not going to change, not changing your text across different screens will not affect it look, right? You can use pixel. But when you know that it will affect look, for instance, on the desktop, maybe you have a very big font, and you know that that font will not stay when it gets to mobile, right? You can choose to go with something that is responsive. So this is an example of responsive font size, right? You have the body font here to be 16 pixel. Then this is now, when I'm now using this H1, I'm using font size of 2 REM. The interpolation of this is 2 times 16. So this one will be 32. So when I'm saying 2 REM is 32, right? So 32 pixel if root font size is 16. If root font size is 10, that's going to be 20 pixel. This will be 20 pixel, 2 REM. So this is like saying 2 times the root font size, right? So those are common things that you will see. Then mobile first approach to design. The mobile first approach means designing for small screen first, then adding styles for larger screen using media query. That's just what the mobile first means. You're actually designing for small screen first. So that means that whatever you are writing here, and that's what I'm doing now, right? Whatever I'm writing here works for mobile. So if I need to adjust things, then I can start writing media queries for higher screens, right? So, but whatever I'm writing here is for mobile first. And that's what we mean by responsive mobile first design approach. Why use mobile first? Ensure better performance on mobile devices. Majority of user, a larger percentage of user now access websites and applications using their phone, right? So that's why we have the mobile first design approach. Provides a progressive enhancement approach also. So what this means is that it provides an opportunity to start with the basic features that fits into the phone, right? Then eventually, if you have other features that are supposed to be for other larger screens, you can use media query to bring them in. So apps with accessibility and usability, just like I've explained, most people use their phone to access websites these days, right? So, and you don't want to be refining them to desktop to see good things, right? Example of mobile first. This is an example. The font size here on the body is 16 pixel. Adjustment for larger screen, body size is changed to 18 pixel. Extra large screen, body size is changed to 20 pixel. You can see that this one is minimum width of 768. So before you, because it's going to read from top to bottom, before you get here, that means whatever is here is for lower screens than 768. So this is mobile first approach now. Whatever is here, mobile screen first. Then when you get to 768, whatever is here is for higher screens. Then again, whatever is here works until you get to 1724 pixel, where this will now kick in, right? This is just an example of adjusting the font size, right? You can have several properties being adjusted in this declaration block that you have here, right? So the more you practice this, the more it makes sense to you. So apart from what we've looked at, making font size responsive, making layout responsive, using media query, right? Then you also have to make your images and text responsive. So to ensure images adapt to different screen size, you usually use the max width of 100%. So what this means is that it just forces the image to stay within its container. So whenever you are working with images, don't forget to set a max width of 100% on the image so that it will stay within its container. So if the container within which the image is placed is just 100 pixel, no matter how big that image is, it's going to be forced to stay within that container, right? That's what we mean. Then also there's this SRC set that you can use, property that you can use on images, right? It just ensures that you can load different images for different devices. For instance, if you have hero section, right, on your application, and of course the design that you will have for a very large screen is going to be the image size you have for a very large screen is going to be way much bigger than for what you have on phone. And in order not to make users consume resources and waste their resources, usually it's good to serve them the right size and width of resources, right? So it will be wrong to actually be serving something very big on small device in terms of image, right? So this SRC set allows you to actually load different image sizes based on the device. That's just what I want to say about that. And here is an example of how this works actually, right? So you can see that we have the I have the image flag here, the IMG flag, and the attributes are just listed there, the SRC. So you can see the SRC is using small.jpg. So this will be used as the default, right? And this will be used as default and for the mobile too. So, but you now have the option of setting the SRC set where you can load other images. So here we are saying when the device width is 600, use medium.js. That's what this is, JPG. When the device width is 1200, use large.jpg. This can be anything, right? But we are just saying this is the image we want to use, right? If the device width is 1200 and above, this is the image you want to use if the device width is 600 and above, right? And this is what we want to use, right? If this is not loading or it's not available for whatever reason. So I just have to document this here so that if you also want to process that, it just makes sense. This tells the browser to load medium JPG for screens up to 600 wide and large JPG for larger screens, right? So here's the example. If the browser does not support SRC set, it will default to the small JPG. So then the SRC set property actually image set for different screen devices, and I've explained that. So this one just say use medium JPG if the screen is 600 pixel wide or smaller, and other explanations that I've made. Then for this one, right, it's just saying that if the screen is less than or equal to 600 pixel wide, right, the image should take 100% of the viewport, right? Otherwise, so it should just be 50% of the viewport. That's what this is trying to explain. If you don't understand this thing, you will not be able to use it. That's why you just need to understand it and use it, and it's not hard, right? Then responsive text. So use VM, REM, or media queries for text resize. So usually when you want to resize your text to fit across different sizes, so you can choose to use view width, right? For instance, here now, if I'm saying font size is 5 view width, don't forget that one view width is 1%, right? So text scales with the screen width. The importance of this is that you won't need to even adjust it in the media query as we are moving and changing across different screens, right? It will be responding because this will be responding based on the screen width. So if the screen width is bigger, right? 5% of it will be bigger. So let's say the screen width is 140, 1024 pixel. So that will be 5 times 1024 pixel. Not 5 times, more like a fraction of that, right? So it will be responding based on the screen width. That's what I'm trying to say there. So all these things are some of these things I will also explain them by the time I'm working on the application. So you see that responsive design makes website flexible and user-friendly. It's not a choice. It's something that you must learn to do. Use media queries and breakpoints to adjust styles dynamically. So choose relative units, right, for flexible layout, just like I've said. If you want responsive design for your fonts and all that, don't use a pixel. For a mobile first approach, follow a mobile first approach for better optimization. And don't forget, I've also said that SEO now supports SEO actually supports mobile first approach designs. Optimize images and test for responsiveness. So responsive design is not just about media query, the images, the text, right? The choice of layout. Those are the things that must be captured when you are talking about responsive design. So that is just what I want to quickly talk about so that by the time I'm implementing them here, right, you won't be lost. Of course, you can always read more too. You will not be able to talk about everything here. Let's quickly work on the news container, right? So I want to work on this guy here, the featured news. So I'll just say, don't forget, whatever I'm doing is here for you to see, right? We did it together. You can see the news container here. I also want to remove, okay, not here. I think this is the one that so you see that I have this news container, right, which is the main section. That's what I'm targeting now, right? You can see where it ends. So that's what wraps the entire thing. The news container. Then we also have a dot dark on it so that when JavaScript adds that dot dark, that can also affect whatever we are having here. So here we're just going to say dot news container, and you can just have max for that region so that it will not be too big, right? You can just have max width of 900 pixel. So it's going to restrict the size. You can see that this is restricted in a way. Although we are on a larger screen, so it's bigger. On larger screen, I'm using something bigger than that, right? But on what's it called now? On smaller screen, right? It's using actually 900 pixel. So that's why I told you that this is going to be mobile first. So on mobile, it's going to be using that. Then margin, let's say margin of 20 pixel and auto. So this is what you do because you have already set the mask width to 900 pixel. You still want to be perfectly centered, right? That's why you're saying top and bottom of 20 pixel, but left and right, let whatever is left right? After assigning a mask width of 900 pixels, whatever space is left, let's reboot it to the right and to the left of the container. That will just make sure that this is perfectly centered, right? Then we also have padding. Let's set padding to 20 pixels so that we have space within the container, right? So we can also start checking what you are doing here. So you can see that everything now is at the center, right? Just based on what I've just done. And it's still using the mobile device. It's still using the mobile mask width that I set here. But okay, let me also quickly do that so that you see. If I do at media, at media screen, right? So that allows you to actually define the media query. So I will just make sure that it stays below. At media screen, we can just have let me just put my declaration block here. You can just have max width of, no, not max width. I want to do the mean width for now. Let's say minimum width of 1100 pixel. So we are saying, let's turn the dot news, what I have here now, this, right? I'll just copy it and update what I want it to change to. So that's how you do media query. So I'm just targeting this, right? This for mobile. But when I get here, this is already bigger than mobile. So I'm changing this to, okay, let me use this. Sorry, let's just change it to 1024 pixel. 1024 pixel. So I'm changing the width to 1100 pixel, right? So which will be bigger than what we have currently. So that's the only thing I want to influence. I'm not changing this. So you only change what you need to change. So eventually, margin of 20 pixel auto will still be applicable. Padding of 20 pixel will still be applicable, right? So the only thing that will be changed is the mask width from 900 pixel to this. So if I come here now, it's going to be wider, right? And we are going to see it clearly by the time I apply the shadow. So by the time I apply the shadow, it's going to become clearer. All right. Let's continue. Okay, I think there are some things I'm not seeing also because I've not populated the featured section. For instance, something is supposed to be on that featured AI news and latest update before this one, right? And they already told you I'm making API call to actually get this. So this is kind of live, right? So let me also quickly bring that in because it's JavaScript implementation, and I will just walk you through how it works and show you what you need to do. But that is not the focus of this tutorial, right? You can copy it in my GitHub repo just to use, but I will show you how it works. All right, so you can see that those details are now populated, right, using JavaScript. So what I'm doing there is that my application made API call, right, and got this data and then display it using JavaScript. The same thing with this. This is coming from JavaScript, right? So let me just show you that part. So you know that in the JavaScript code here, in the scripts.js, I have this function. Don't worry if you don't know how to write a function, right? I have this function, right? It's an asynchronous function, and all I'm just doing here is I'm using the native library, JS library, to fetch, right? The fetch function. I'm using it to fetch. The way the fetch function works is that you pass the URL, right, of the application you want to make request to. So I want to make, I'm making request to newsapi.org here, version 2 / everything. So this is the endpoint / everything. And these are the options. So question mark Q equals to artificial intelligence. Then of course you need to pass your API key. So if you are going to implement this also, for it to work, don't use my API key, right? I won't be pushing that out. I'll be changing it. So all you just need to do is go to news.org, you register an account and you copy your API key, right? It's as simple as that. So you just click here and go to news.org. you'll be able to register if you have not registered. So I've registered now, as you will see. So you will need to register. Now you can see sample usage here. So what I'm doing is just what is available here. You can tap into other things. You can see that this is even having a URL up to this. So if you want to display more content as it is coming, right, you can also do that from here. You can play with that, but we are not doing JavaScript. So these are some of the things that we'll still do when we start working with JavaScript. But I just wanted something that we can work with, right? Then what am I doing again? When the response comes back, right, I'm awaiting it. Then once it comes back, I'm converting it to a JSON file. If you don't know what JSON is, don't worry. These are all JavaScript jargons, right? Then here I'm using the document function, document.getElementById. by ID. So on the HTML, right, I have IDs on these sections. So for the feature section, I have featured news ID. For the latest update, I have the news list ID. So that's what I'm just in JavaScript to get here, right? So that I can get those containers and actually populate data into them. Featured news. The name must be exactly what you have on the HTML page. Then get element by ID to news list. So what I'm just doing is you can see here that for the featured news, I'm just the data that came back, which is this, right? It's an array. So it's an object, right? Which don't worry if you don't know what objects are, but this is an object and it's having a field called articles on it. The article is an array that showed the list of articles. And if you look at the library I just showed you, it's also part, okay, I've closed it. It's part of what is there, the shape of the item. Let me see if I can still quickly check that. All right, so you see that what I have here, look at this sample. Can you see articles? It's an array of objects. So you have items in there. And I'm just typing, in this case, I'm just typing into the title, but you can type into author, into description, and many other things, right? So so what I'm just doing here is I'm tapping into it. I'm selecting the first item that's in the 0. So arrays are 0 indexed, right? They are indexed 0 to 1 and all that. So I'm just picking the first item, description, article URL. That's what I'm doing here, right? And I'm actually passing it into the featured news inner HTML. So the inner HTML actually allows you to pass in HTML, multiple HTML, and that's why you can see that I'm having H3 here, paragraphs here, anchor elements here, and I'm attaching it to the featured news. And that's what is showing here, right? That's what is showing here as featured. And it's just one because I'm picking the index 0, right? Then the latest news, I'm slicing the result. Let me also show you here. So you can see I'm saying data.articles.slice. This slice is a JavaScript method that allows you to actually create a copy of an array and actually define the number of items you want from that array. I just wanted 0, I wanted 1 to 5, right? So I could have said 0 to 5 also because it starts from 0 instead of 1 to 5, right? But let's just leave it like that. Then I'm mapping over it. Then I'm using JavaScript document to create an element. So this document also have create element function, and you can give it the tag, the element tag that you want to create. Here I'm creating list element, so list item. So what I'm doing here, I'm just saying to this list item, the inner HTML of that list item, let's attach this, right? That's what I'm doing there. Then once I'm done, I'm appending each of that to the news list. Don't forget that this news list is a UL. So, and this guy is a list. I'm appending this list to the UL. So that's what creates this list of item. I know this might be too much for you, but I just don't want this to be like I copied it and I pasted it for you without explaining it. If you can catch it, fine. If not, by the time we start doing JavaScript, it's going to be something you'll be able to catch. Then finally, after all that, I'm calling this function, right? So if you don't call a function, it's not going to be invoked. So when I call this function, right, this is going to be triggered and the code inside is going to be implemented. It's going to make API call to that other application, get me the result, and I'm manipulating that result and presenting it to the UI. That's why JavaScript is sweet and fun, right? That's that about that. Let's continue with our design. Okay, there's something I want to show you because right now, if you come here and click on this, right, you can see that the dark mode is in action now. So there are other things that I will set, right? By the time I'm done, this thing will show properly. So the dark mode is in action. So let's just move on. Okay, and how did I implement the dark mode? So I'm also using that document.getElementById to get the theme toggle. You can see that on the dark mode here, this button, I have ID of theme toggle. So I'm using JavaScript to get it so I can interact with it. Document.getElementById. So that gives me access to that button. This is that button. So I'm adding event listener, add event listener. So there's a way you can add listener to elements on the page, and that's the function you are using, add event listener. The type of event, there are different type of event, but what I want here is click, so that when this button is clicked upon, right, I'll be able to do what I need to do. So I've registered a click event on this using that JavaScript, right? Then what I'm just doing is that once that function is triggered, I'm saying document.body.class_list. So this class list actually allows you to this class list is having a toggle function. And what that toggle does is that allows you to add this class to the body element and also remove it. So that's what I was telling you, that the JavaScript is what is going to actually add the dark class and remove it also. So we are using the toggle function so that once you click, it adds, once you click again, it removes it automatically. Then we're also changing the text content. So that's just what we are doing here. So if it is dark mode, we are using this. If it is light mode, we are using this. And that's why this is switching, right? So there's no magic here. You can see that this switch to this switch to this. And it's because of what I've done here in the JavaScript function. So that's it with what I did here. So you can also go through, like I said, I'll leave the code in the repo. You can go to the session and try to understand it and implement it further, right? So let's move on with what we are doing. I think we should be wrapping up soon. Let's just style other things that needs to be styled. News container, I think I've styled that. So let's style the featured section. So for the featured section, we have .featured. We have .featured. Right, .featured, we are going to say background of var white, right? We are going to have padding of 20 pixel, right? Then we are going to have border radius of 10 pixel. So then we are also going to have shadow, because there is shadow there. That's why that box really looked good, right? 0 pixel along the horizontal, 5 pixel shadow along the vertical, 15 pixel blur, right? Then RGBA, we talked about this color code also. You can check the series, right? So the first R stands for red. We want 0 for that. The green, we want it to be 0. The blue value, we want to be 0. This combination of 0, 0, 0 is going to give us black, but we want it to be transparent. So we say 0.1 transparency, right? So by the time you come back here, so can you see now that this is looking good with that shadow and all that? Then I think that's all we, okay. Yeah, so let's also add, there's an H2 dot featured H2. So let's also style that margin bottom so that there is space to the bottom side of things of 10 pixel. So that just ensures that you can see now that there is space between the title and this section. All right, so let's also move down to the next part. So we have the latest news section. So let's say latest news. So for the latest news section, we just want margin, okay, latest that's news, right? We just want margin top to be 20 pixel. Then we also want background to be var white, right? So you see now that that variable I stored become useful because I've used it multiple times now. Padding of 20 pixel, right? And then we also want border radius of 10 pixel. Then the shadow is the same thing with what we have here. So we just copy that. All right. So by the time we come here, you can see that this section is also having that shadow. Yes, we are yet to style this, but it's already there, right? So let's now style the UL. So we have the latest news UL dot latest news UL. So the UL is, we are using this descendant selector because the space means descendant selector. UL is a descendant of latest news, right? So let's have list style of none. List style of none. So that is going to remove the bullets and all that. Then we're also going to have dot latest news li. So here we are going to have padding padding of 10 pixel, top and bottom, 0 left and right. Then we can have border bottom of 1 pixel, solid, right? I think I have HDD somewhere here. Okay, no. So let's just say dash dark 80 HDD. Okay, this looks more like gray anyway, but let's just leave it like that. So here we can have solid var dark 80, right? So that is for that section. By the time you come here, so you can see that this is spaced out, right? This is spaced out. I think I have too much padding somewhere. I will come back to that anyway. Let's move on. Then okay, I think before I leave that part, latest news. Yeah, so this is not supposed to be 200. I was just wondering. So this is 20 pixel, right? That's why it's, yeah. So this is what I expect to see. So you can see that this is clean now, right? So once you know all this concept, design is going to be very simple. Then let's come to this section, which is the article section. And I think that's the last section. So we have dot article grid. So these are the names on the HTML, right? If you check here, you see that also. Article grid. So under articles grid, we want to set this to padding. We want to add a padding of 20 pixel also. Right? Then we want background color of var. I want that F9, F9, F9. Okay, I don't have F9, F9, F9. Okay, let's just see what it looks like so that I can set it. Hash F9, F9, F9. Okay, more like off-white. So we can just set this as dash white 80, or let's just say white 85, hash F9, F9, F9. All right, so I'll be able to come down here and just set that variable so that if I need to use it again, I won't have to be thinking about it. White 85, right? So then let's set the margin to 2 rem units. So this is a responsive design decision now. 2 rem units will mean 2 fraction of the whatever the root font, 2 times whatever the root font size is, right? Then left and right of 0. All right, so once you apply that, you can see that this is clean again, right? This section is clean, but we need to now lay out it. I want a 3-column system on this screen. When I'm on when I'm on tablet, I want a 2-column system. Then when I'm on mobile, I want a 1 column system, but currently there's just one column system because we have not set that. So let's convert this to a grid, right? Then we can just say dot grid container. So don't forget that we've discussed grid already. It's another section that we've had. So if you don't understand how grid work, I will refer you to that video. Try and check it up. So display container will be set to display of this container will be set to grid, right? Then don't forget that we have grid items. I've already set this up, right? If you check here, we have grid. This is a container, grid container, and each article here, right, is actually a grid item. So inside there, we have display of grid for the container. Then we want grid. Usually you also type the grid template columns. So we want to use something that is this way responsive. That's why I said when you make these decisions, right, you can take advantage of their responsive feature. For instance, the grid template column can be made responsive, right? And how you do that is that I want an automated way of generating the columns, right, based on the device. So here I'm going to set this to auto fits, right? So then I will set a min max value, minimum maximum function, right? And I'm going to set this to minimum of 250 pixel. So it can then maximum of 1 fraction unit. So this is responsive because you will not need to do anything responsive again, right? It will just automatically set this for you. So auto fit here means you could have set 3 here, but if you set 3 here, so that means you are limited, right? So, but if you use auto fit, it just means that whatever number of children item you have, just auto fit them. Then the minimum maximum width that we expect of them is minimum of 250 pixel. So the moment the width cannot, the moment the screen width can no longer hold 250 pixel, they will just automatically move to the next line, right? Then maximum 1 fraction unit. Gap of 20 pixels, so just so that we have space around each grid item. Then margin top of 20 pixel also. So by the time you check this up, let me see. Okay, this is not implemented, and I want to believe grid container. Let me check my CSS dot grid container. Yeah, grid container. Yeah, I think it's correct. It's not ash. Is it ash? No, it's not ash. So it's correct. Okay, yeah. That's just for the description. Then let's set the article itself. Dot article. So dot article, set background to var white. Then we want to set the padding to 1 rem unit. So this is a responsive design choice also. 1 rem unit. Set the border radius to 8 pixel. Right. And also box shadow. The box shadow here is different. So we are going to have 0 horizontal, 4 pixel, vertical, 8 pixel blur, then RGBA of what we've had before this, right? And then transition. So we just say transform 0.3 seconds. All right. Then let's also work on the article image. So dot article, don't forget I said the images must be made responsive. So this is where you set the image now to fit into the container. So yeah, the way you do that is set width. You can also set mass width. So width of 100%, whether you're using width or mass width, this will just force the article to stay within its container. Don't forget that. Then a height of 150 pixel. You don't want the height to be that big, right? Then you also want to set this property of object fit to cover, right? Then border radius to 5 pixel. So that's what we want for that part. Then dot article, each article is having heading 3, right? So we want to also start that font size of 1.2 rem, right? And then we also want margin set to 10 pixel, right? Margin set to 10 pixel, top and bottom, 0, left and right. Then there's another place where we have dot writer, right? So we just set the font size of that to 0.9 rem, right? And then the color, this one for the sake of time now, I want to end this 6 #666, right? So let's just leave it like that. Then the size or the source. So we also have a source target. Don't forget, I added a span and added a source target. The source is going to have font weight of bold, right? And it's also going to have color of that blue color, var blue something. So var blue 80, right? So by the time you check what we have here, so you can see now I have this, I have this, and I have this, right? So, but the grid system I defined is not yet in place, right? I will look at, there must be a box somewhere, and I will look at it, but you can see that this is already taking shape, right? And it's still looking good because we took a mobile first approach, right? Then away from the source, so on article, when you hover on any article, right? I want to set that over effect. We want to transform just to move it a bit. Transform, translate. So translate means you are moving from one point to another. So it could be along the x-axis or along the y-axis. So I want along the x-axis, y-axis, minus 5 pixel. So it will just move upward a bit when you hover. So can you see that? When you move away, it comes down. When you move on it, it just moves over a bit. So that is that effect. So finally, let's look at the footer. Dot footer. So we can just say text align to the center for the footer. Then we want the padding of 15 pixel. Then also we want background of var, that blue background, right? var blue 80. Then we want the color to be var white. And then we want margin top. Margin to the top of 20 pixel. All right, so that is just basically what I need here. And don't forget, I define a responsive design here that works for us, right? So what I will just do is, there's another responsive design I want to add, another media query I want to add. So I want to say at maximum width, this is targeting the mobile version of things now, at maximum width of 768 pixel. So that means anything 768 pixel and below, which we'll be talking about the mobile phones and tablets. So I want to set the news container padding. I want to set the padding to 15 pixel or 10 pixel. Then apart from that to dot featured, right? So this is like CSS grouping now, dot latest update, latest news, right? I'm saying for these two, I want to apply this padding altogether, 15 pixel. So what this means is that if you check here for featured and for featured padding was 20. On mobile, I'm just changing to 15. The same thing for the latest news, padding was 20. I'm changing it to 15, right? On devices that are smaller than or equal to this. So that's just it. Then let me try to see why this is not turning out to be what is expected to be. For the grid section, I said display, where is this place? Dot grid container, display grid template columns. I think there is a box somewhere here. So I have repeats, grid templates columns. This is correct. Repeats, auto fits, then minimax up to 50 pixels, one fraction. This is correct. All right, it's just a little typo. So grid template columns, repeats, auto fits, minimax of 20 pixel, one FR, right? By the time you check here, you can see that this is looking like what it's supposed to look like. The image also stays within its container. The text are responsive, right? The layout is also responsive. By the time I adjust these two, you can see that this is now a one column system, right? By the time I come to something bigger, it changes to two automatically. It changes to three. I didn't have to define that in the media query, but because of my choice of grid here and this responsive grid function, right? I'm able to do that automatically. Then this section, you can see that the text is responsive across board, right? You can see that the text is responsive across board. So that's it with designing something that looks cool. And by the time you switch here to, you can see that the dark mode comes right in and everything on top shows clearly. All right. So yeah, it's been a long one kind of, but that's it about responsive design. You just keep practicing and you take this knowledge to the next application and you see that you grow from there. We've done a lot. If you have been following me from start to now, you should be getting confident around building things, right? So eventually we do JavaScript, eventually we'll do other libraries. And this is the word of AI integration will come in at some point from me, and you'll be able to build some things with AI integrations on top. All right, thank you. See you in the next section.